All right, we're going to call the meeting to order. Thank you all for coming here tonight. We'll open with a prayer led by Art Denby.
Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day, people on this earth that recognize the gift of life that you have given. We also pray this day for our Governor Brown Back, who has become the ambassador for religious freedom here and around the world, and that your guidance be upon him. We thank you this day for all that we have, for all that we do, for the greater honor and glory of your Son, our Lord Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. Let's remain standing. Who is the oldest veteran present?
I'm sorry.
He went out to get his food, huh? We don't want to hold off on that. Who's the oldest veteran present right now?
I'm 70.
I'm 70.
70, how old are you, sir?
77.
77, I think you got it. Even older than 77? Okay, if we could have you lead us in a flag salute, we got a flag right here.
Sure.
We would love to have you lead us.
Okay, thank you. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And if you thought you're getting away without a song, you can sit down. But, you know, we're going to have a song and dance every time. So, well, a song anyway, not the dance. Well, we'll do God Bless America. Everybody knows that by heart. And we don't have to hand out a song sheet for that. You need another agenda. Oh, by the way, let me make an announcement here before we do the God Bless America song. Hey, Jim, somebody else got to lead the flag salute for you. Okay, glad you're here, Jim. If you paid full price at the door, they had kind of forgotten. They had a new person working there, and they had forgotten about our agreement for the discount. So if you paid full price at the door, take your ticket, go back, and get a refund. And also, you don't pay for your drinks here. All drinks are free. So that's the two things we get. So if you paid full price, you know, let them know, and we'll make it right here. So I don't want to sing a solo, but we're going to do God Bless America. God bless America, my home, sweet home. Give yourself a round of applause. That was good. Okay. We'll start out tonight mentioning that we changed things. For those that don't know, we no longer take the minutes. That's partly because Debbie is working at the Hyatt and has a hard time getting here. And I was filling in with secretaries, and we never were able to get the minutes in, or somebody would take the minutes and she couldn't decipher them and put them into the minutes sheet. And finally, we decided we were going to have the meeting videotaped every time, and the videotape will serve as the minutes. So if you want to look at the last meeting, I've got a link there. And you don't have to go to that link, just go to our website. Go to the meetings tab, and then it'll come up, and Brian has those put up right after the meeting, real soon after. So thank you, Brian, for all the work you've done last year. This has been a success having the meetings videotaped, and we appreciate it. The treasurer's report is on the back, and I have to apologize on last month's treasurer's report. I was in such a hurry. The numbers are all correct. Every dollar amount is correct, but over on the other side where I have the dates, you know, the beginning balance and the ending balance, I had some old dates from a template that I had put in there. And I don't know how I managed to get it printed and handed out and everything. I didn't notice it until now, until today. I didn't notice that mistake. So anyway, correction on that one. And the treasurer's is actually Troy Newman. He trusts me with a lot of this, so that's where we're at on the treasury report. This one has the correct dates and the correct dollar amounts. And if anybody would like to give us a motion to accept the treasurer's report as noted here, I will note one item on there. We have only $7.13 left after going through what we went through with the national news and everything else. We just pretty much used it all up. So we took in a little over 100 here already tonight. We took in 3 memberships, so we appreciate that for anybody that is signing up as a new member. So do we have a motion to accept, I do, from Jim Kilpatrick? He's making the motion to accept the treasurer's report as printed. Do I have a second to that motion? We have a second, and all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, our treasurer's report is approved. Tonight we have with us a special guest. We have John D'Angelo. He moved to Wichita in around 1965. He was actually born and raised in Pennsylvania. And I lived in Pennsylvania for a while when I worked for Boeing as a field representative at the Fairchild factory. Some of you may or may not know that Fairchild built the nose section for the 777 and the 767. And they needed a quality control person out there at the Fairchild factory, and I was the one that was sent out. So I actually lived not far from where he grew up for my time out there, which was about 2 years. Anyway, it was in Uniontown, Pennsylvania. He moved here, and then he's been working for the city in the Parks Department, and for about 41 years in one way or another connected to the city manager's office. He's been involved with Century 2 for the last 20 years. He was here by the time it was built in 1967. It was built between 1967 and 1969. So let's give a warm welcome to John D'Angelo, and we're going to have him talk about the future of Century 2.
First of all, just thank you for letting me come and visit with you about Century 2. I think there's a lot of information out there that some of it's not totally accurate as to what's going on, what's not going on with Century 2. And I know we had a workshop with City Council back in September where we provided a lot of information. Some of that's online. If any of you want to get it, you can certainly download it, and we can certainly go over it. We started on the Century 2 project. It's been started and stopped about 3 times within my career that we've looked at it a couple different points in time. One of the challenges when you think about Century 2, what we do, think about it as 3 separate businesses. The first business we do is performing arts. That's easy. I mean, you come to the theater, you do that. The other piece of the business is convention. And a lot of people, unless you're in the convention business, you really, that's a whole set of requirements that are needed for that. And then the third piece of our business is what we call our local business. And that's the home show that's coming up. That's the bridal fair that was just a weekend ago. That's the different types of things that the citizens come down that live here. It doesn't mean those events don't have benefit to the community beyond that, but those are local shows, and those are important, and an important piece of our business. But each of those have different expectations and different demands. And it's important to think about that. When Century 2, when I talk about Century 2, I'm talking about the round building, not the Expo. Expo, the square, was built in '88. And the round building was built and opened in '69. So the idea again of the round building in 1969 was it was going to serve all 3 purposes. They had circuses in there. They had ice shows in there. They had dirt in there. They had all those things in that round building in those different pieces. And in '69 it worked. The type of business that we had in those days, that worked really well. The business now that we're competing against, there are limitations to the round building, and those have become really apparent. And if you look at the trending information about the number of conventions, the number of in-town shows, we'll talk about performing arts separate because it's a separate set of issues with them. But you'll see it declining. And even our numbers for this last year, we see a further decline. So what we're seeing is that we're not very competitive in the convention business. And some of that has to do with there are more opportunities around us. So in '69, we were it. Now there's other competition that's out there that wasn't there. And then the market, the convention market, I'll talk about now for a minute, has certain expectations. What a convention planner wants is a 35-foot grid so that they can lay their show out. If you think about Expo, it's laid out in the 35-foot grid. Expo is 92,000 square feet. There's 30,000 of that that's underneath a 14-foot overhang. That's not desirable space. What a convention planner wants is 32 to 35-foot ceilings. So they can hang banners, they can extend their booth up. And you see it in Century 2 now. The other thing that we don't have that really would help us be more competitive is the ability to subdivide the space. Like we have Textron that uses the space, but they only use 60% of the space. In the old days, you used the whole thing, but as they've declined, they're only using a portion of the space. And the problem we have is there's no way to subdivide the 92,000. So when they're using it, we have to heat and cool the entire space. We basically do it with pipe and drape. Board of Education, we've hosted their meetings, same sort of thing. They don't need 92. Competitive convention centers have the ability to subdivide space. And so we need to look at that. Now, could we retrofit it? Sure, there's lots of options. You know, when we look at renovation, you know, what are those options, including in the round building. But the limitations for convention business and what we found from the assessment we did, and again, we did the assessment in 2013, and it told us that there is business out there. We did 2,200 surveys, and of that 2,200, 495 of them said that they would consider the city of Wichita. The vast majority of them, we don't have mountains, we don't have snow, you know, the obvious reasons we're not going to have a convention. But there is, and then of that 400, all we're trying to capture is about 30 to 45 of those. And if we could capture that, we would see about a $45 to $50 million economic impact. This weekend, for example, you've got the ice skaters that are down at Intrust. It's the international show. It will have a huge impact on everybody, restaurants, the attractions. Everybody will see visitors that they don't see. The good news there is that's money that they're going to leave in Wichita. That's why convention business is important to us, is it's new money. And we all in this room, I'm sure, have traveled. And when we get home, we look at our Visa bill and we go, wow, we spent that much? Again, we left that money in another city. And cities are competitive when it comes to that. And we want to stay competitive as a growing community to continue to look at the convention business. But we also want to be realistic. We're not going to have a National Republican Convention here. We're not going to have that type of national convention. But there's a lot of state business as well as regional business that we could be competitive. Right now, we're losing out to other cities like Tulsa, like the smaller communities around us, Kansas City, and we're not. And then the state business that we have historically had the corner of the market is now rotating. They go up to Johnson County, they go to different venues, and then with the casino just down the road here, they're growing their business as well. They're building more event space, and that becomes more competitive for us. Now that's all right. We've got to recognize that, but the city has already made a significant investment in building a convention center. We've sold the hotel now, but a convention hotel is another key to it. I mean, you do want to have a hotel that's connected to it, and the hotels that are built around the convention center is important. Those are all elements that any convention planner is going to come to your community, and they're going to look at all those things to make a decision whether they choose you. Out of the 25 to 30 bids that we make, we see probably 3 to 5 now. And most of the reason is because the facility, and they're the ones that will tell you, some are just, they're polite, they don't tell you, they just decline to use Wichita. But the ones that we do get to talk to, they tell us it's the facility. It's dated, it's tired, it needs freshening up. So that's the convention business. The local in-town shows is the same thing. There are some local shows that would like to grow, but more importantly, the challenge with their local shows is not being able to subdivide space. So now I can't have 2 shows going on at the same time, which would help our business model, to be honest with you, to have more activity within the building. So I either have to give that 60% up and understand that's the only thing that's going to happen in that building. Now, let's move to the performing arts for a minute and talk about the round building. The round building is full of asbestos. Everything above the ceilings, the walls, all have asbestos. It doesn't matter what the city chooses to do, whether we renovate or whether we demo it, we're going to have to deal with the asbestos. It's not an issue that's going to go away. We'll just have to deal with it. When you look at Convention Hall, which can host 5,000 people, it was the one where they did the Miss America, for those of you who are familiar with that. It has low seating, seating that pulls out. It's where we do the graduation. I'm looking at Jim because Jim and I have been with the schools, and it's where graduations occur. It's 5,000 seats. There's no elevators. In order to get to the balcony, you have to either go up from concert hall or the one elevator in exhibition hall. In 1969, you didn't really care about elevators as much as we do now. And I have to say, personally, physically, I care about the elevator because there's sometimes I need it. But the reality is Convention Hall doesn't have that. The other thing that Convention Hall doesn't have, it's a very hard space and the type of sound dampening to make it more of an intimate space for performances. So we don't rent it out very often for performances, just so you know. It's pretty much flat floor space, and the problem with it on the flat floor is at the outside it's 10-foot booths, on the inside it's 8-foot because it's a pond. So when you lay out the grid, your grid lays out so that the booths get smaller, and from a local show producer, the challenge is how they're able to make it work financially is selling those booth space. They have to be able to sell a certain number in order to make it affordable, not only to pay us the rent, our rent is actually not their highest cost, but to do the other things that they need, marketing and advertising, all the other things to make a successful show. They have to be able to cover that off what they charge for those booths. So that's why the layout of the booth. And the other thing is the utilities that are in the floor, because again, every event that occurs, we're selling electricity, gas, water, and we have to have that ability to fill the hot tub, to drain the hot tub, right now we've got an RV show in Expo. And we have to have enough power in there to light up all those RVs. When we do the big witch show, it requires us bringing in actually a generator, additional air, just to make the machinery work. It's simply that the facility has limitations, and those limitations, again, as we look to the future, not today, but the future, we have to think about those things. Performing arts, here's the challenge for the performing arts. Right now, the concert hall stage is booked so much that we don't have very many open days. And when we have the opportunity to get a Broadway show to come through, which we enjoy those, the challenge is right now they have to open on Tuesday and close on Thursday because we don't have a weekend to give them. And part of the challenge is because the symphony has to have a high quality space, so the symphony rehearses on concert hall stage. That's the only space we have that is quality enough for them to rehearse. When it was built in '69, there's a trap room underneath concert hall, and that was originally what was envisioned as the space for rehearsals. The problem is, somewhere along the line, there was an air conditioning problem, and the solution was to drill holes in the floor. So if you go to concert hall next time and you look under the seats, you'll see these little mushrooms. Basically, that's return air. But the problem is, all that noise now comes upstairs. So again, our rehearsal limitations is part of our issue. The other issue is with the type of hall we have, it's a colonial hall, which means that the seats run from one edge to the other. The ideal seats are in the middle, what we call seat number 1 and 101. They're actually in the middle of the hall. If you were built a hall today, you would have to put an aisle in the middle so that, again, that people could access it. And the other thing we don't do very well is we meet the bare minimum on ADA, but if you are in a wheelchair and you want to be by your companion, we have real limitations of where we can see. It's just because of the age of the hall and what we have. I mean, there's nothing we can do to fix all that. But I wanted to give you kind of what we did do starting in 13 is we've done a bunch of studying with different groups to look at the assessment side of this. Is there a market? We didn't go into this and say there a market. We said, is there a market? And that's what's led us to what we've done. We've done what we call block planning right now. We said, okay, the site is from Douglas to Lewis Street, from Main to the river, you just draw. And right now, we no longer own the Hyatt. We don't own the building up in the corner. Everything else is city-owned. Where the library is currently, it'll be moving. The property around there, that's all city-owned. So we said, okay, we're going to stay on that footprint to make sure whatever we do has to fit, whether you renovate or whether you build new. It has to fit within that footprint. That's not to say we didn't explore the option of putting a performing arts center off-site. You can do that. We looked at it, and you can do that. And when I say block planning, all we did was taking blocks based on what the assessment has told us that we need, and we said, how do those fit in these different locations? And that's all the design work we've done. We've not designed a building. We've not made any decisions. There's no decisions that have been made. I've been part of all the meetings, and both the council, with the manager, and there's no decision. The only decision you heard was a recommendation during the workshop of the managers, and that was his recommendations. The council has never taken action. So just so you know where that's at. Here's the challenges with the round building. If we want to go into the round building and fix it for performing arts, okay, we have to first of all fix the fly space. Our fly space that you see, the seams that come in and out, needs to increase in the height in order to continue to be competitive to attract these other shows. So we're going to have to grow the fly space, and either we're going to go through the ceiling or we can bust out the floor and drop it. And again, I'm not the architect or the engineer. That's why we need to do more work. But those are the two options, because you've got to grow the fly space somewhere. The other challenge with the building is you need to make the stage deeper and wider. Right now, we don't have sufficient wing space or depth. In the case of Lion King, when it was here, we were not able to support the full show because of the depth of the stage. It just simply isn't deep enough. So the show we saw was a great show, and nobody would know, but it certainly wasn't the production that they could do. And in a more modern facility, it would enhance the performance. The challenge now is newer shows are having even more requirements. And a lot of what you don't see is being hung up above. There is a lot of technology that is being flown up above. I mean, computers, you'd be surprised. When you see lights and everything moving, there's a lot of technology there. And then right now we're also putting part of the production in the paint shop, and then we put part of it in the basement underneath. So the orchestra can't even all fit, so we have them in different locations. The other thing is, if you've ever noticed, if you've been down there, is a show like Lion King had 32 semis. The only place we can unload them is off of Kennedy Plaza, off of Douglas. They will no longer fit down the ramp, but more importantly, when we get them down the ramp, we don't have enough clearance downstairs to move them around. And we still then have to move everything upstairs. In this last show that we just had, they unloaded actually at the docks in exhibition, but in order to move an item, it took 2 minutes and 13 seconds to move it from the docks to the center stage. And that's expensive for the producers to do. And that will influence their decision on what shows they can. We tried to get the Phantom with the local Chris Mann was in touring production of Phantom. We couldn't support it. It ended up performing in Tulsa and Oklahoma City. So we were disappointed because Chris is a big draw. He just performed a Christmas show at our place for the Grand Opera, but we really wanted to see if we could get the Phantom. To give you some numbers, for example, on Lion King, and again, Lion King's the top. Lion King did about $4.8 million in ticket sales. Of that, about 38 to 40% of that was out of town. That's a big piece of business, both out of town and local. Wicked, which was the most recent, did about, I think, $2.1 billion in ticket sales. These are just ticket sales. So these are big pieces of business for the city. Certainly Century 2 is proud of them, but they're important to the cities as we look at generating revenue and keeping it to be viable. The challenge is, again, as we look at expanding, and I'm not saying we've done the design work, let's say we fix the theater. Now what do we want to do with the other 160,000 square feet of space that we don't have a program for? Because when you look at the pie and you say, okay, how big of a piece within that pie do you need for the performing arts? We have that information. We can fit it within the space. But then we have all this extra space that we don't have a program. One of the suggestions was to look at a program like in San Francisco, what's called the Palace of Fine Arts. The problem is, at what level are we going to continue to want to subsidize it? Because currently, right now, you subsidize Century 2 about $1.5 to $2 million annually. And some of that comes out of the guest tax, some of that comes out of different funding sources. Our revenues do not meet the expenditure side of what we do. Some of that's because of the business, and some of that's because of some fixed asset costs with the cost of rental and how competitive we can be with what we can charge. So those are the reasons why we don't do that. Keeping up with technology is another struggle that we're continuing to, not fight, but continue to struggle with. What we find is there's a heavy need for technology in the convention and the performing arts business. We spend $250,000 on Wi-Fi within Century 2. We spend $3,000 a month for just the service to the building. Now, that service makes us about $13,000 to $14,000 annually. So we're not losing money on it, we're charging for it, but it's something that we have to make sure works. And so it requires a lot of resources in that sense. The numbers that you've heard range anywhere from, if we just fixed the round building and just got it up to, put elevators, fix the HVAC, take care of the asbestos, clean it up, it's somewhere around $270 million. The convention side of the business, Expo, we don't have a number because one of the latest recommendations is to expand Expo. We really don't have a number for that at this point because when we did the block planning, we didn't look at that option. Not to say we didn't talk about it, we did, but that was not an option we explored to just get some. And these numbers I'm giving you are really just that, they're square foot numbers. It's like taking $800 a square foot times this many. The assessment tells us we need 150,000 square feet in exhibition space. Right now we have 60,000 prime. It says that we need 30,000 in ballrooms and meeting rooms, another 30,000 in a grand ballroom. So we need a total of about 210. You need to multiply that times 2 or 2.5. Because what that doesn't tell you is all the ancillary space. You need space for back of house, you need space for storage, restrooms, for pre-function space where people gather to meet before they go into the exhibit hall. So truthfully, the size facility is about a 400,000 square foot convention center is what we need, based on all the assessment information we've done. The performing arts, we need about a 2,200 seat theater like what we have now. We need to ensure that we have the ancillary space to support music theater. The last thing we want to do is to do anything that would harm the nonprofits because they have been good partners. And so we want to make sure the scene shops, the costume shops, all those pieces are included in the performing arts, including a high quality rehearsal space so that if we need to use it for rehearsals, we can. We could also rent it out for a small gathering, a wedding, or something like that. But we want to make sure that all that ancillary space is also part of that program for the Performing Arts Center. The estimates on a new Performing Arts Center, and this is new, this isn't renovated, is about 130 to 140 million. The convention center is about 250 million. Now, that's buildings. Then you've got parking, and then you've got the site work that you have to include with that. So I don't want to fool anybody to thinking that it's just those numbers, because what we have to figure is all those pieces of the pie. And to be very honest, we have not explored all the options on the round building, and I know there's a group that's going to, part of a discussion that's going to occur as part of the chamber, is a quality of life, and Century 2 is part of that discussion. I think as a community, we're going to have to really discuss, okay, what do we want to do with the blue roof, and then what are we all willing to spend? You know, to give you some examples, the roof on the building is between $5 and $7 million to replace, and it needs replaced right now. The Kennedy Plaza, if you've been out there, you see it, it's striped with different concrete so that we could avoid some of the injuries that we've had out there. It's another $4 to $5 million. That's just fixing. That doesn't design anything. That's just, if we were to bust it all out and replace it, those were the numbers we've been given on estimates. Now, there's a lot of other things. The HVAC system is a cold water loop, and there's an energy plant out there in the back that you'll see smoking all the time. That's what cools and heats the round building. We need elevators. We need to clean it up. And that's where that 270 million came in. So it's really just to fix it up, and it doesn't really build anything new. One of the challenges with the round building is going to be, if you expand the theater, how do we do all this in a phased approach? Because the key here is we can't go dark for 2 years. We'll put the tenants out of business. We don't want to go dark for 2 years and lose the state and convention business we currently have. They'll choose another site, and we may not get them back. So part of these numbers are predicated on this idea of doing a phased approach, so that you would not shut down entirely, you would continue operation. You know, there's some savings there, and I think we estimate that about 30%. It just depends on what we finally end up with. But I do want to say again, no decision has been made. The process that we're going through is a community engagement process that's actually going to start here within probably the next 30 to 60 days. It's a partnership we're doing with the chamber and part of their quality of life. We're going to work with them on a community engagement and allow the community to kind of tell us what they think. And then the mayor is also going to select a group of both patrons and business and different people to serve on a group to advise him and the council, using all this information, what are their thoughts. So there'll be a couple different ways for that to occur. At some point in time, we have to talk about how's it going to be paid for, and I know that there was some conversation about the referendum. The reality is, we don't have the answer. Right now, the city does not have the capacity to fund something of this magnitude. We're thinking, and we're looking at our CIP right now to see if we could just fund a phased approach of an expansion of the convention center. Go ahead.
Next question. Okay, say if it's cheaper to tear it down and rebuild another one, could you build another one similar to what it looks like, so we could still have the old? People want to keep it because of the icon, because it's an icon. Just replace it with something similar, but it'd be cheaper to build than to try to keep this one going.
I think we have to be respectful to the iconicness of it. Yes. I'm not here tonight to tell you what it's going to look like. One example, though, that we have used, and you can go out and Google it, is the Long Center in Austin. They had a round building that was built in 1959, I consider much uglier than ours. And they replaced it and actually used pieces of the old building, and they mimicked the roundness with this kind of beam-like structure. And I think it's kind of nice. I mean, I like the looks of it. But they had a similar, they were really passionate about what they had. And I thought the idea of reuse was a great thing too. I mean, if there's some elements of the building as it's being demoed that could be reused, might be an interesting,
Well, make it look like it, has a round
yeah, might be,
part of it, and
might be an
it was.
interesting
That's-
challenge.
That's what really made Wichita was that round building.
I would agree. And I will tell you from outsiders' perspective, the round building right now is difficult to market. They look at the round building and they say, okay, it's dated. That's
John?
not us that live here.
John, are you ready for questions?
Sure.
If you are, then you're.
Sure, we can
we're
answer
at that
questions.
point. Okay, James, go ahead.
Yeah, if we're gonna lose the business if we remodel it in one chunk, you're gonna lose the business if you tear it down.
Well, correct.
So tearing it down isn't gonna benefit us as far as saving our customers.
Everything we've done to date with the numbers that we're talking about considers a phased approach. For example, if we were going to build a new performing arts center, there's enough space to the west that you could build it along the river. The other thing we heard loud and clear, to be honest, is everybody says we should embrace the river. If you really look at Century 2, unfortunately, and there's a couple reasons. Right now, Century 2's back is to the river. You know, so how would you embrace the river? But there's enough space between Century 2 and the river. You could build a new performing arts center, move performing arts center out. You could do, then you could phase in the construction of your convention center, or you could flip those two. And all the block planning we've done considers that. So we're still looking at a phased approach so we don't put anybody out of business. Now, there's going to be some, again, you can't do a project of this magnitude and not impact it. But the other question, you know, when you build on to Expo is how it impacts the theater, for example, because you're going to be eating up the parking lot. And now you're going to either build a structure parking or you're going to look at parking at a different location.
John?
The parking space. Can you enlarge the parking space there? With one of some of the new acquisitions you take on around there.
The parking on what side, I'm sorry?
Parking space around the existing Century 2.
Uh-huh.
Can that be enlarged in all this project, or that can be reduced?
It'll actually, it depends on what decision we make. If we keep the current structure in its current place, we're probably going to have to look at a structured parking. You know, and then the other thing that we also are sensitive to is the old library. What happens with the old library? One option is, you know, kind of what we did with the other library across the street where, you know, Fidelity bought it and renovated it, did a beautiful job. Used to be the Cosmosphere for us before the exploration place was built. That's one option. We could outsource it to a private, you know, if there's a private entity that wants the old library. The other thing we talked about with the library is there a way to use that to get some of the ballroom space and the meeting room space for the convention? And so we're looking at that as well as another option. But to answer your question about parking, we're going to have to look at a structured parking. You can't expand that much without affecting parking, and yeah, we're going to have to look at a structure.
Well, let's let Debbie go next.
Would you care to elaborate on just why we need more ballroom space and meeting room space in Century 2?
To be
Let me tell you that I work over there and I
Mhm.
see lots of empty space that's not being used, and yet you're telling us we need more of that.
Again, I think to be competitive, to get some of these conventions that we've failed to get, and there's a list of them we can share with you that we have bid on and didn't get, will require more meeting room space and more ballroom space. Currently, the relationship that we have with the Hyatt and part of the sale was contingent. There are 13 rooms upstairs in what we call Promenade that are actually owned by the city, that basically the Hyatt pays us a flat fee and they manage those. And then they have, I believe, and you probably know better, I think it has 11 or 12 of its own ballrooms. But meeting room space right now,
I'm talking about, yes, there is that, but there's all those meeting rooms in Century Two.
we have 4. We have 4 meeting rooms in Century 2.
What size?
They seat between 50 and 100. That's a meeting room. We only have 4. And 1 is a rehearsal space. Happy to show them to you. There's 2 downstairs and 2 upstairs. Room 101 and 102, and 201 and 202. Room 102 is actually a rehearsal space. We put a wood floor in there because we had so much rehearsal going on downstairs in the basement with MTYP, Music Theater for Young People, that the kids were walking out in the driveway, and the fear was we were going to have someone get hurt. So we renovated one of those because it was so underutilized. So one room is actually more of a rehearsal space, but we only have 4 in the round building. Everything else is upstairs.
But you're saying you need more ballroom space, and I mean, I work with some of those walls that they have. Nice gentrifications of the program, and there's 2 spaces there that are huge that could actually have two of those going on at the same time.
In the round building you're talking about now, again? Yeah, if you look at the chamber, what we're talking about is a ballroom that truly is a 30,000 square foot ballroom that would host a 19 to 2,200 seat catered meal. That's what we do now. And both exhibition and convention is 43,000, and exhibition's 43, and convention's 34, including the lows.
And what guarantee do you have that we're going to get all this extra business if we have 20,000 square feet?
Again, guarantees.
There's no guarantee.
There's no guarantees. I absolutely agree with you on that. I will just say to you, the assessment we did, which was, again, a survey of 2,200 through a MIT survey. The MIT group is what event planners use. This is convention business alone. Again, showed 495 of those were willing to consider Wichita. Of that, we're trying to capture between 30 and 40. And we feel that's a relative number that we can be competitive against. Right now, we lose a lot more business, and I know if you talk to Tammy, she'll tell you the same thing. There's business we have to turn away because we're not, number one, the venue isn't attractive enough for the event planner, and number 2, we don't have the space.
Okay, I want to give everybody a chance for one question first, and then I'll go to the seconds after that if we have the time. Art, go ahead.
Okay, what are the funding sources you're looking at to do anything with this?
Currently, what we're looking at is to see what sort of capacity we might have in the CIP with the capital improvement program. Part of that will come from the guest tax. In other words, some of the debt service that's been retired, and historically what we've done is use part of the guest tax that we achieve is used to pay debt service. Some of that's been retired, and so we'll use that capacity, and I don't have the numbers for you today. It could be 100 million, it could be a little less. I don't know what our capacity is. We're working on that right now. If we go down that route, it'll be a phased approach. Obviously, we won't have enough money to do everything at once, so we'll have to phase it, and we'll have to look at how we do that. I don't have the answer to that question.
Won't be a countywide sales tax again like we did for interest.
That's one option that's also being discussed. The challenge with any sales tax is how do we make sure that it's something that the citizens are going to support and want to do. But it's one option we could certainly look at. And there is some discussion occurring about that. To really do this project, from the standpoint of just simply, if you have a project that's $500 million, I mean, it's going to take some other funding source than what we have now.
Okay, next question. Go ahead.
How was Century 2 funded in 1967 when you built it?
It was bonded, and I'd have to get the exact information, but I think it was just our standard GO bonds at the time. I think it was 12 to 18 million. in '69. It's funny how, you know, and then it's also, I have the original newspaper that, you know, when they dedicated it, it's great to read. But you know, a lot of the discussions we're having today is very similar to what they were discussing about the removal of the form. And the community was really at odds whether they wanted to build this flying saucer, as they called it. And it's really interesting to think about that, so.
It's true.
So,
Go ahead,
so
go
it
ahead.
would be, so county would be included, the Sedgwick County would be included with the taxes to build this new thing, right?
If the county chooses to
Oh, right
participate.
now it's just the city?
Well, again, we can't commit we can't commit the county. The county would have to choose to be part of that. There is some support. I will tell you that I've had conversation at least with one county commissioner that's supportive. But we would have to go over there, and I don't know what the electeds have had conversation-wise. I can just tell you mine. And yes, if this
I
is.
don't even live in this county.
No, if it's going to be a sales tax, then yes, you would have to. Understand, when we did the arena, it raised about $230 million in 30 months. So this would have to be a 60-month project if you wanted to get the full 5.
I don't come down for you.
If we did just city, the city generates about $80 million annually in sales tax. So you can do the math.
Anybody who hasn't had a question yet? Oh, go ahead. We've got 2 of them there. Go ahead.
Can you expand upon the asbestos and ADA requirement expenses and challenges?
Well, there are a lot of unknowns right now. I mean, if we wanted to keep, let's say we wanted to divide the circle in half, and you wanted to abate the asbestos out of half of the circle and let music theater and them operate. Not sure it's possible, but that's going to be one of the challenges, because all the asbestos is up above. The other thing.
Is it encapsulated right now?
No, but it's not pliable right now or harmed. We actually have air quality tests done on a regular basis, and right now our reports have shown us as long as we don't disturb it, it's good. The challenge up above the ceiling, and we have some pictures we can show you, is the catwalk system above is literally a wire running with a steel panel. That's how the stagehands have to get from one end to the other. Not safe, not a good situation. So we don't put them up there very often at all. But sometimes you have no choice. I mean, in order to have a production work, that's the only place you.
And you can't change that because you can't drill or.
Correct. We addressed, for some of you who've been there lately, we spent about $3 million improving the women's restroom and the concession stands in Concert Hall. And basically what we did was we blew out the concession stands that were there, used that space and pushed the concession stands even further out. But to do all that, all the walls, we had to abate everything. The ceiling, if we drill a hole in the ceiling, we have to have it abated. It's all asbestos.
You mean if you drill a hole, you have to take asbestos out of that area?
We have to have it done by an abatement company
Right.
that has to encapsulate it and take it out.
Take it out.
Yeah.
So even to drill a hole.
Even to drill a hole. Now, that's not a terrible thing, because they can do that pretty quickly, but it's expensive.
And currently, you said we're subsidizing the Century 2 at a rate of several million a year. Excuse me. And if we spend $500 million, $500 million, we're obviously not going to make a profit, and no one sounds like they expect to make a profit on it. But wonder if our yearly, even at $10 million a year subsidy would be 500 years to break even, not counting interest. Is this one of those projects, like some people say about the bus, well, we're never going to make a profit on it, but progressive towns need to have public transit, and public towns need to have a this or that, and progressive towns need to have that sort of deal?
Yeah, I think to be fair about the subsidy question, you have to recognize that what you're talking about is pure operating versus revenue that it generates. You're not talking about the business that comes in as a result. When a convention comes in, there is additional money left in the city that also is where we pay the subsidy out of, the guest tax. So we have to be honest about how far. Is there, absolutely agree with you, is there a way to close that gap? Yes. And have we done some? Yes. In the case of when we had Lion King here, we closed the gap quite a bit. Can we do a Lion King every year? Right now, not. We don't have the ability to support that. If we do the expansion, is it going to require a higher level of subsidy? Perhaps. We're going to have to make sure that we figure that out as part of this project.
And one short thing, it sounds like First Century Two was basically one building with different wings. It sounds like you were saying, we were pretty okay with fine arts now, that we would have maybe separate buildings and be a complex rather than putting everything under one roof.
Look, the work we've done to date, we've got a couple options there. If you build new, we talked about building something along the river, and we talked about building a parking structure and then connecting it to the convention center. Now that is not the option of expanding Expo. That would literally put them both on the same site. The shared parking structure then becomes your expansion. If you ever have to expand the convention center in the future, you could vacate the parking structure if you build it correctly and use that as part of your expansion. If we think through this, again, at that point in the future, they would have to look at additional off-site parking with another structure to accommodate the demand if it was there. But the idea of the shared parking structure between the two buildings was to allow for some kind of ability for expansion by the convention. But again, we've not made any decisions. We just looked at it, again, from if you took a bunch of blocks and laid it out, and you can see it in the pictures if you download it, that's just all it is blocks laying next to each other.
But my point is, from what you were saying, they could have a separate fine arts building.
Correct.
And a separate exhibition hall.
Correct.
And it should be a complex, rather than one building.
What we've seen in we did an economic study to see what was most beneficial. There is a advantage to building the two facilities where they could share some staff. And that's where you see some savings. If you build two facilities that are off-site, we looked at the old Alice Hotel site to put the Performing Arts Center there, leave the convention center at its current location. You'll see the cost go up. It's not huge, but there is more cost.
But in terms of building it too, then you would say doing these things separately, you could keep the fine arts, build a new fine arts, and then work on the rest if you're done with that.
Yeah, the phasing can occur. It's just to be fair and honest to everybody. If you phase it, it's going to cost more. There's no way to avoid it. I mean, if we build it, we don't care about phasing, which I think we should. That would save you some money.
Did you have a question? Okay, anybody else for a question? I haven't asked mine yet. James, go ahead.
Yeah, to me, the problem comes by, you look at all the money and everything else, but you gotta make, if you're dealing with competition, which you are out there, there's several of them. The interest is terrible for seating and for the aisles that they made for the seating. So are you considering the comfort? I mean, if people aren't comfortable being there,
I think, this project, if or when, and we'll use the if or, when you go into a design phase, there's going to be a lot of public input to talk about those very issues. And I think there are some lessons learned from the arena. I think that the arena tried to put a lot of seats within a confined space, and arenas are bowls. And a lot of people say, well, why don't we just use the arena instead of the convention center? If you look on a map, you'll see how much bigger Century 2 is than the arena, actually. The challenge is going to be through the design phase, and then, like anything else, when I go shopping for a car, it's what can I afford? Because we're going to have to make some compromises, because at some point, for example, I know that our estimate on our Performing Arts Center is what I call mid-tier. If you look at Bartles Hall that they just built in Kansas City, that was $1,000 a square foot. That is not the number we used. We used 800. So if you want that, if you want a architectural icon like that, you're gonna pay more. And we as a community are gonna have, that's part of the discussion.
John, I keep hearing the number 400,000 is like the number of square feet that you actually need to get some of these
That's for convention.
for a convention, and that's what we're talking about. What do we take, and is it possible to bring Century 2 and Expo Hall together? I'm assuming that's all in that 400,000. If we could come up with 400,000, what do we need? You know, where are we at?
Well,
Between Expo Hall and Century 2, how many square feet do we need to get to 400,000?
the two facilities, right now you're at about 200,000 square feet. You don't
So
want
we
to-
need to double it. Oh,
Yeah,
that's
almost.
really bad.
Yeah,
Okay.
and the sad thing is the round building doesn't work for conventions.
Okay.
Because you've gotta have.
Right, you've explained that.
Yeah,
quite
the
well
convention
already.
has to be a 2-to-1 ratio. For an event planner to really look at your space, they want that 2-to-1 ratio for them to lay it out and make sense for their conventions. And the challenge with the round building has always been that pie. They come in, they look at that pie and they go, okay, this won't work. And we're told that a lot. And it's just in the nature of the floor. You know, we could gut the round building and get 150,000 square feet. The challenge with gutting the round building is the center of the building is what supports the roof. You know, and I know that Bill Warren, who has been public about his support for it, says, well, I've got an engineer, we can fix that. You probably can. You know, there's a cost. You know, my guess is it would be a 300-foot bridge. If you look at this highway construction,
yeah.
you would have to run some kind of support to do that. And I'm not the engineer.
Wow. Go ahead, Art.
Again, I recognize you're not the engineer. If you put a structured parking, you're talking about a multi-level parking facility. It would be interesting to see what the engineers come up with to have multiple ingress and egress from that facility. Because you can imagine what that'd be like if you only had one entrance and one exit. You know, you never get people in and out of there.
Oh, no, yeah, no, you're absolutely correct on that. The biggest challenge, I mean, for any large event, the arena knows this. When we did, I was one of them that worked on, when we had the Rolling Stones out at WSU, the biggest concern we had was the exit. We don't have enough buses to move enough people fast enough. Because everybody wants to leave at the same time. They'll come at different times. And we did that when we did Flight Festival every year. We had about 24 or 30,000 people. They all want to leave when it's over.
Right.
And that's a nightmare to try to figure out how do you do that. And you're absolutely correct. You have to have multiple egresses to get out. Now, that assumes the high end. That means you're doing these huge events. Again, I want to go back. We see a market for much smaller multiple events if we have a space that we can subdivide and do something with. But right now, with the way Expo is, when we do a 60% rental in there, we pipe and drape it. And 40% of the hall is not used. Because there's no way to have two events at one time. Now, can you put air walls in there? Sure. I mean, there's all sorts of options, but we're gonna have to work through all those.
So it looks like renovation is probably gonna be at a minimum, it's gonna take quite a bit of money to renovate it to get to where it fits what the market needs right now.
Yeah, I think this project is so big, it's gonna take a lot of money either way we go. And I think it's going to be really interesting to discuss this idea of how to, because there are passionate people that want to save the round building. How do we do that and how do we make use of it? Because that's the real key to this is, okay, you fix the theater, now what do you do with the extra space? You know, and what are we as a city willing to subsidize?
Well, and you're subsidizing, some of that is the local stuff that you started off
Correct.
with, and that's good. I mean, if people wanted to have a wedding, I'm sure that they're charged. You know, I have no idea what something like that costs for just a small area, but I'm sure it's competitive with what they would pay elsewhere.
Yeah.
So, you know, if you're subsidizing it for local shows and local things like that, then I don't really have a little heartburn with that. But
The
the big
convention,
commercial stuff, that has to stand on its
Yeah,
own.
the convention stuff though, keep in mind though, the convention, when they come in, they are of value to you beyond, Now, I'm not an advocate to subsidize bringing conventions in, but I think you do have to value what they do bring in, just like these ice skaters that are here now.
Yeah.
Or the
No,
rabbit breeders when they were here.
Right.
They
That-
left
that's
money
commercial.
here.
That's totally different than a
Right.
high school class that
Right.
wants to come for graduation.
Or-
If they're subsidized a little bit, so be it,
Yeah, no.
I have no problem with that.
And truthfully, we are used for a lot of graduations. The schools use us a lot.
Go ahead, Art. We're gonna close this up. Last question here, if we can make
It's
it
kind
that.
of a rhetorical question in a sense, but what's the chances of you making this same presentation that you made here tonight? And I know I shouldn't say this, to the Koch brothers.
There is discussion going on. I mean, we have not kept them out of it. I know the mayor meets with them on a monthly basis, and there is discussion going on. We're discussing it also with other. I truly believe if we go down the road of a sales tax, there still has to be a private investment in this. It's not gonna be 500 million just out of sales tax. There has to be. And on the performing arts side, my goal was to try to get to 60% of it, to be privately funded. Now, I don't know we can get there. If we're trying to raise 130 million, I don't know I'm gonna get you 60 or 70 million. But I think it's worth pursuing private funding for some of this.
Call it the Koch brothers conventions.
Well,
I agree.
Sean, you have been extremely informative here tonight.
Thank
You really brought the whole new light to the whole topic. We appreciate you being here. Let's give a big round of applause here. John, your meal here's on me, so okay.
I gotta go see the wife.
We'll get her and bring her back.
She'll be on me.
Okay, all right, very good.
Well, before you go, I'd like to second not having garbage seating like in trust. It's terrible.
Yeah, that's disgusting.
The seating issue, when we talk about the theater, is gonna be critical. I mean, there'll be acoustical issues. Understand that the symphony wants 1,300 seats, music theater wants 2,200. So you have to have a flex space that's able to do both. And you have to do that for it to make business sense for them. I mean, one of the people have asked, well, can't music theater go out to WSU for 2 years? They really can't make that work financially. In fairness to Wayne and what he's created, he needs that higher number to make it work. And so he can't just do more shows because the students aren't here long.
Yeah. Furthermore, if they could make it for 2 years, they could make it there. They
Sure.
wouldn't come back.
And WSU has been
Right.
approached. I mean,
Right.
I don't want you guys to think that, that they haven't reached out to the tenants and talked to them. We don't discourage that. I will tell you though, the one thing that I think it's undervalued is this whole Broadway series. What Theater League's doing candidly and is willing to do, given the limitations of a Tuesday through Thursday, is huge for this city. Like I said, Lion King, Wicked, they're talking about bringing Hamilton here, they're talking about other shows. And you gotta recognize, that's expensive for them to do. And they're making money, they're not leaving here losing money, I'll assure you of that. But it's difficult. And that's a piece of business I'm very passionate. I mean, I'm a big supporter of music theater and symphony and the Grand Opera and music theater for young people. But I'm also a big supporter of Theater League and what they're bringing.
Absolutely.
Because that's a huge piece of business. So, thank you all.
Oh, thank you, John.
Please
Thank
feel
you.
free to let me know if you have more questions.
All right, good. What a great speaker. That was excellent. Okay, and thank you for the questions. It was a productive night. I'm glad we have that all on tape. We got old business, we'll be talking about that later. We'll see where this goes. The old business being the referendum on keeping Century 2. And we'll just wait and see what happens with that. He said 60 to 90 days before they actually start taking public comments. I'll have you know, we started talking about this, October, September, November. Well, November we didn't because we were off for Thanksgiving, and then of course Christmas the fourth Thursday, it conflicts there. So, but they've been pushing and kicking the can down the road on that for a long time. So he's saying 60 to 90 days on that. So we'll just hold item H for 60 to 90 days and see what happens on that. On the new business item, down on your agenda, item I, governor candidate forums. This is hardly a big enough room for all the candidates, let alone, the people. This is just not big enough to have all the governor candidates. And maybe we should have Century too, Debbie, I don't know, what do you think? Maybe we have a dozen viable candidates, and who knows what it's gonna be before it's all said and done. But I do want to host a governor candidate forum. It's what we should do. The National Federation of Republican Assemblies is going up and up in notoriety and popularity, and we should be doing the same in this state. And we can do that. We're working that. And so we definitely want to be hosting a governor's candidate forum soon. Doesn't necessarily have to be February. It could be March or April, but nothing past that.
Well, actually, I was going to bring it up. The state Republican convention is going to be here in Wichita, and Saturday night is going to be a debate among all of the candidates. So I can get that information out rather than trying to.
When is that?
January 16th.
January 16th?
At 17.
Yeah.
Where at?
15, 16.
At let me think, the Marriott out east.
Oh, the Marriott.
And so they that was something that that has come up, that they got all of the candidates to commit to coming, and then also at the meeting, they'll have, each of the candidates will have a little booth where you can go and
Will this
talk.
be on television, or how people's gonna know about it? How many people
I'm
gonna
sure
know?
The Republican Party will be advertising
Yeah,
it more as
they'll-
it gets there, but it's the state Republican Party convention.
Oh,
They rotate, like, Topeka, Wichita, Salina, and we won this year, so a lot of that stuff is coming to us next month.
Well, and that's important, a piece of information to have in there. The two options we have is either go find a place bigger to take all the candidates at once, and we're gonna still have that, whether they have one or not. We're gonna have our own forum too.
Yeah.
Probably the Pachyderm will have one too. But, that's fine. It's different people that can come at different times and so on. So we either have to split them up, do like they did with the national presidential candidates. You had your A team and your B team. For a while when there was too many candidates to spit on the stage, or you ask one question, you got 19 people answering. It's just, you forget what the question was by the time they get there, and it gets too thread worn, all of them answering the same question. It's hard to be fair. So the other option is to divide them up based on popularity. And so I don't know any comments on preference to whether you want all the candidates together, or whether you'd want to have the 3 leading or the 4 leading ones together, and then maybe the next 4 most popular. I don't know that would work. I think, if you remember how offended, what was it, Rand Paul, how upset he was when he missed the cut and he had to go on the B team and wasn't able to challenge Trump. So it's really a hard thing to do. I'm leaning toward probably getting a different venue for that particular meeting when it happens. To find out who's the most popular, though, I don't know whose number you're gonna have, but I wanna spend a little money on a website feature for KRA members and for Republicans, registered Republicans, somehow control it, whereas we could have people vote, on the governor candidate of their choice. And I think it would be interesting. You could do a lot of nice, bar charts and pie charts, and just see where the people are. Chris Kobach has a really well organized campaign. He's raising a lot of money, but he's actually not raising nearly as much money as Jeff Collier. So it's going to be interesting to see. I was really surprised that there's that many people that supportive of Jeff Collier. So and he's a nice guy. I think there's a lot of good people running. So you know, we wanna treat them all right. We wanna do the right thing, and you know, I'm hoping that we can put up a website, a separate section on the website just for the governor's race, and you know, if there's anybody who would like to volunteer to help with that. Brian, I'm not sure if you're up to building that for us, or if I have to go outside and get somebody to do it, but I'm prepared to put a little money into it, so.
Well, if it's just a simple voting thing, I would think it would be terrible.
Is that something you think you might be able to do for us?
I'm sure there's tools to
Okay.
do such a thing.
All right, can you go ahead and look into that, and maybe you and I'll talk separate from a meeting, and we'll sit down and look at what we can do in that regard.
I did also want to mention Collier's going to have a little bit of that incumbency bonus.
Oh, yeah?
So
Yeah,
I'm not surprised he's getting some money.
Yeah, he's doing better than the rest of them right now, money-wise, aren't raising money, so. Okay, announcements, we have the Pachyderm Club, everybody knows about that. I think everybody here understands we have a Wichita Pachyderm Club, one of the best in the nation, and they meet Fridays at noon in the Ruffin Building downtown on the 9th floor. If you have not gone to that before, come tomorrow. You can come as my guest, I'll buy your meal. After that, you can join and buy your own meal, but for one time, you're on me, so. I also run the Kansas Coalition for Life, that we're down on agenda item L. We need additional people on site, and we need additional people to help us with our funding of our Lifesaver Moms. When a mother decides that she won't have an abortion, and we try to help her, if it's financial reasons that brought her there in the first place, we try to help her not just for a short amount of time. We're with her until the baby turns 18. So we haven't had any babies turn 18 yet, but we've got some teenagers, so we've been at it that long. So anyway, our next KRA meeting, item M, is February 22nd. And I don't know, just a show of hands or voice vote here, is that too early to have a governor candidate for him, or is that too late? Actually, with your information about the 16th.
That would be the Thursday after they have it.
Maybe that's too soon. Maybe we should go for March or something.
Something I wanted to.
Let the campaigns mature a little bit and shoot for March.
I'll probably best put it on the website. Currently, the Young Republicans are meeting like tonight. They have a governor candidate scheduled every month.
Oh, one at a time, yeah.
Yeah. And so tonight I think it was O'Malley. It was not a big name, but they've had Kobach and they've had Barnett, and I didn't know if our meetings coincide, if we wanted to try and
well, that would
merge.
be nice. Yes, that would be nice.
The space that they have is not nearly this big. And so I wanted to get feedback from the group. If you want to do that, I'll talk to their
well, I'd be more than happy to work with them. I was a member of them for a long time. I got aged out of that.
You know, some months were the same Thursday, some months were not, and that's their schedule. So I was gonna, like I said, I wanted to.
Well, we're simply the fourth Thursday.
Yeah.
I know that because the last month we had a proposed meeting, which was delayed by John and the other people on Century 2. We sent them to the Kobach meeting, so with the Young Republicans. So I'm aware of that. So.
Yeah, if I remember right, I think they go with the last Thursday.
Oh, the last Thursday, and we're the fourth. So then it would not be the same.
Sometimes. Yeah. But I thought I would I'd put that out for discussion if we're interested, because they are already scheduling governor candidates. It would be just one at a time, as far as I know.
Yeah, we'll definitely want to talk to them. So if you could talk to them and then get back with me on that, we'll talk about that. Anybody have anything else? Any other announcements for your own groups or anything? Yes, go ahead.
Bill Ryder from Wellington.
Yes, Bill.
So I am, starting last week, I filed for the 80th House District. And so I would against Anita Judd Jenkins on the 80th. And so I would like, I've got some on my pickup that I'd like to bring in some cards. And
Oh, absolutely. You're always welcome to bring those. Yes.
so
We-
it's
we love
basically
it.
the Wellington area, Arc City area.
Okay, well, we're honored to have you here, and you're certainly welcome to hand out campaign material, and you might even get a donation or two out of the group. You never know. It was funny how that
I was
happens.
the one that answered back on the email where you had questioned whether we were going to be here or not, and so, I don't remember. Somebody emailed me and I emailed right back, yep, everything that you heard on the radio, because we paid for advertising, but we bribed, Andy to, we got a lot of extra time from Andy.
I bet he did. That's good, that's good.
I think it was yesterday. I just heard a glimpse.
Yeah.
Didn't catch it all. So.
Yeah.
Okay, you heard it on the radio. Okay, well, very
I
good.
heard it this morning too.
Yeah.
Very good, very good. Okay. All right, well, we're ready for, James, you have something else?
Yeah, with all that activity in February, I think we're gonna think about ours starting in March. Having our next meeting.
And not having a February meeting?
And I don't really care to have 10 or 20 people up there, so maybe a smaller group, bring in like maybe a top runner and maybe 3 other candidates, so that you spread them out like that.
Part of the problem, James, is we have to get them to agree to it too. And that's the hard part of it. I'm thinking maybe by March we'd have a few washed out. You know, that wouldn't it wouldn't be quite as big a crowd.
Well, I second that idea that with the state convention being here the weekend before,
that's a little bit soon. Yeah, I think that's too
and
soon.
what we can do is after they do they'll have all of the governor candidates there that Saturday, and we can kind of get a feel for, I don't know whether it's Democrat or Republican, but we've got some high school students, and we don't really,
Right, I would say,
want to waste
right,
time
who
with
do you
that.
get, that's why I would like to have a website, where the public can
yes.
vote, Republicans can vote, somehow we'd have to control that.
Yeah.
But, have it legitimate where we can say, okay, here's where we're gonna cut it off, right here, if you don't have at least 5%, or if you don't have, and that way, nobody can get mad or say, well, you were being, partial, or, you treated me unfairly or something. Yes, Brian?
Well, one idea to avoid the potential Thanksgiving Day style kiddie table approach would be perhaps if we just set aside a number of slots per meeting per se, and just take it as a first come first serve, whoever is able just to arrange it, so that we're not saying you're the popular kids and you're the unpopular kids, just you guys scheduled for this month and we'll introduce you and allow you to speak here, and then another month different groups could, and if they get weeded out, well then we don't have to worry about them.
Well, if we could devote, keep in mind, we have only one meeting a month. We have 10 meetings a year, that's it. So we've just spent one. We've got 9 meetings left for this year. And so we can't have repeated meetings on the same topic. We've had that with other things.
I'm not saying have like 5 of them or anything like that.
Right. Well, with House candidates, you can go pick an area. You can have more than one House candidate for them. That works. Same way with judges. You can look at the municipal or divide it up some way. But you can't, with all of them running for this one seat governor, it's going to be really hard to divide that. To take, 5 is really. I don't like it when it gets more than 5.
Yeah.
We had 4 with the school board, and that was about perfect. For multiple candidates.
I guess if we want to have a meeting on the 22nd, I can get a program together, and then it will be after the Republican convention, and that may thin out some of the candidates, and then by March we might be able to put together some.
What would you have in mind for February then?
I'll figure out something.
Yeah, I'm sure.
I'll figure it out the next day or two, and then I can put it on the website.
There's even House candidates, and there's lots happening. So, do that. So, Go ahead, Art.
Are we able to say anything about any of those candidates tonight?
Oh, sure, whatever you want to say. Say whatever you want.
I got one I want to point out.
Okay.
Speak up a little bit, it's hard to hear though.
What's that?
I can't speak out.
Okay. Well, you all heard that former candidate against Roberts is running, that Greg Orman.
Oh, yeah.
I looked him up. He used to be a Democrat, then became a Republican, now he's an independent. He has donated money to Barack Obama, to the
He's Barack Obama
and
and Michelle Obama's personal friend.
Yeah.
yep. And I'm trying to think, there's one other person he gave money to, I can't remember who it was. But anyway, he's running as an independent. He thinks he's going to his campaign's going to be bringing sides together, but he is pro-abortion.
No, he's absolutely, we would not give him a seat at our table. Absolutely not.
Oh, yeah, the consensus with him is because of his past history, he'll weaken the Democrat vote.
Yeah,
He's not.
it would ruin our reputation.
Republican, yeah.
We wouldn't do that. He's friends with the Obama,
Yeah.
and when you spell the word friends, when you get to the end here, S, it's an S with a $sign in it.
Yeah.
Because that's how he's friends with them. He donated heavily to
Yeah.
the Obama campaign twice, so.
I saw today, apparently he's out.
Oh, Al Franken was the other one he gave money to.
Oh.
Yeah, right.
But I think Orman has the largest fund, but the consensus is with his policies,
Yeah,
he's not gonna get Republican votes, and we don't wanna do anything to help him.
You know, stranger things have happened. He could end up being our governor, but he's not gonna do it with our help.
No.
He's not gonna do it, because we've given him a seat.
If he wins, there's always Texas.
No. Are we ready to adjourn and eat? For those, okay. Art Gentry is making a motion to adjourn. Do we have a second to that motion? Thank you, Jim. We have a motion to adjourn this meeting. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. We're adjourned. Let's get something to eat.